Okay, we're back. And this will be part 2 of 3 for our critique of your depth of field project. So let's get this little baby underway. Wow, it's Salvation Mountain, if I recall right. If I think that's where it is. Very interesting. Well, it's a good subject for depth of field. Certainly, you've got everything from the foreground into the background, all in focus. It's an amazing bit of dedication and work that it took to actually build this thing and keep it going. So you've done a pretty good job. The only thing I would do is probably cut a little of that sky out or make the sky stand out a little more, or both. So let's very quickly do both. The first thing we'll do is crop it down a little. And maybe we don't need all of this in a partial sign on the bottom, so let's do this. Now, remember how to do this? We're going to make a duplicate layer. This is our little digital polarizing filter. We're going to make the layer style be luminosity. We'll come up to Image, Adjustments, Black and White. And we're going to drop those cyans and blues, but we want to do it selectively. Here, this is going to do it everywhere. So we'll drop the sky down. We'll drop the blue down a little bit. We'll say OK. And now, if we turn this into a layer mask, we can erase part of what we did on this top layer. So we need a black brush. And we'll set our opacity to, maybe 50%, 40-50%. And that'll let us lower that. It didn't really hurt much here. So now we've got a much more dramatic sky. The colors work better with the colors of the waterfall, the river, all of this stuff. So this is a pretty easy a bit of tweaking on this shot. The depth of field part is really quite good. You did a good job. Let's see what else we got here. Well, we have a nice location portrait of this young lady sitting on the rock. Do be very careful about lens flare that you're getting in here on her leg. Sometimes it's hard to tell, depending on what it's covering. Is that some cool pattern she has dyed onto her pants, or is this lens flare? But this part's really pretty nice. Good use of shallow depth of field. I think the only thing I would do is get rid of this little twig down in the corner that's a little distracting. And because I don't think I would want to crop this, amazing as that may be, I'm going to take that out simply by using the clone stamp tool. I'll come and hold the Alt key down, pick up this part, and just put it right over there. And it's gone. So this works pretty well. I think your trees and your horizon are off a little bit, but that's okay. We can live with that. So good job. Nice use of shallow depth of field and a nice portrait. Well, unless I'm very much mistaken, this is the same young lady. Now, straddling a fence, trying to decide, do I, don't I, does he, doesn't he, whatever. So, again, this is a good use of depth of field. You've certainly got the background sharp, the foreground with the fence and everything is sharp. It's a good job. I might, again, like we did with the Salvation Army, with the Salvation Mountain shot, I might bring some of the blue in that sky down a little, but overall, this is pretty nice. We could, if it weren't for the technical part of the assignment, we could crop in on her a little bit Interesting as the background is, I'm sure, especially to you, she's a whole lot more interesting. So let's do this. Now we're much more concentrating on her. The important thing to notice, though, all of this area in dark is resolution that you've just thrown away. These are pixels that are no longer available to you. This is going to make up maybe a third of the pixels in your resolution. So if you were shooting with, let's say, a 24 megapixel camera, you just threw away 8 megapixels and you're now down to 16. So think about that when you're shooting and be willing to move in tight and get what you need when you're doing the shot. Very interesting Badlands shot, and I love the rig in this. The looks like a Sprinter with a van conversion body. This is really nicely done. Again, we've got a little bit of lens flare here. Be really careful of this kind of stuff. The erosion cuts in here is really fascinating. This is a good deep depth of field demonstration. You've got everything from this little bush in the foreground all the way to the background. Okay, nicely done. Now for the shot itself. What is the shot about? Is it about the van in location? Or is it about this location that just happens to have a van in it? Either way, I think we could get rid of a lot of this to give us a better clue as to what we're actually looking at here. The cool part of this is this area. Background is interesting. It deserves its own shot. But here we have a shot that gives it a little more clarity as to what it is we're actually trying to photograph. Well, this must be the inside of that same van. That would be my guess. And with shallow depth of field, you're focusing on what I assume is a speaker here. Boy, that must really reverberate inside these metal walls. So we got the narrow depth of field. Has a really nice dining nook area in this van. But we are pretty blown out in here. We need to bring this all down quite a bit. We might be able to do that. Well, you probably could have done it in Camera Raw, but trying to do it at this stage, let's see. If we do a duplicate multiply layer, well, that helps us some. Now let me bring this speaker back. And we might even be able to pull off a little trick here. Remember, if you duplicate a layer, everything about that layer gets duplicated. In this case, if we duplicate this multiply layer, then not only do we get another multiply layer, but we get it with all of the settings we did to this one. So let's give this a try. And that brings us down even a little better. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Well, I'm assuming this is a minimum depth of field because it says so. Our only problem is, like one of the other shots we had, it is so minimum that there is nothing in focus on it. So with that being the case, one thing to check and see is if you're this close, you're probably getting some camera shake. And we may not be seeing a focus problem, but a motion problem with the camera shaking during the exposure. So for this kind of shot, for macro shots, you are really far better off putting your camera on a tripod and making those shots. And then if you're going to be that close and doing that anyway, then I would come into a shot like more like this. and that would tell us all we needed to know. You would still have the shallow depth of field, but now would really concentrate on this flower in the shot. Okay, let's go on. Well, our problem here is not the shot. It's a nice use of deep depth of field. It's that the shot is tiny. What this is showing us is it's only at its widest, instead of being 1,000 pixels tall, it's 230 or 333 pixels. That size tells me what happened. You made this your 1,000 pixels, and then you changed it to 100 in resolution. Remember, I'm really sorry, Photoshop really ought to have these reversed, but you need to work them in reverse. Change the resolution first, and then change the actual size for us. Okay, I can enlarge this a little, but it's going to come apart. Yeah, it's a little soft now, and that's not your fault in the photograph. You do have good deep depth of field. This is all about the same. It's the enlargement now is killing this. It's a very clever shot with the color, all of the blue, the blue checkerboard, the blue tile, the blue along here. It's an interesting palette of colors in your shot. So this is cool. Nice concept. Unfortunately, we can't really do much with it at that size. And here we have a shallow depth of field of the moon. I'm assuming this was the supermoon we had not all that long ago. And this is a shot of it through a palm tree. It's certainly a minimum depth of field because only the moon is sharp and the tree is out of focus. But like several of these, I know this probably was as long as your lens would do. But remember, you've got a digital shot here. So we can do all kinds of things with it. And we can now really focus in more on that moon just with a little cropping and adjustment. Okay, I think that's it. Time to move on to the next part.